Mute us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome to Belly Up to the Blackboard, a podcast focused on the reality of teaching and other musings from and about professionals, hosted by Chris Munn and Justin Russell.
All right. New episode.
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah. Last time you weren't here.
No, I was not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a good one, though.
I bet it was. I probably listened to it.
Probably should.
He didn't include me, so I'm going to be a narcissist today.
That's right.
No, I do a quick recap, though. What'd you guys...
Yeah, so we talked to my cousin, John, and we just talked about... So he, in high school, was kicked out of school, and we kind of talked about, like, how school was before that, and then, like, he got into this wreck, and, like, just kind of how it built into... what ended up happening and everything. So I think it was pretty good.
Good. Yeah, it's nice to have those perspectives.
Yeah, it's always good to bring somebody else in here so you don't have to listen to just us.
Yeah.
You know, different opinion. And
so question to you is, after, your years of experience, I guess, on the same topic, and then hearing that perspective of your cousin, how has your message about the importance of a high school diploma changed?
Honestly, it hasn't. It's obviously important, and like you can get by and you can survive without it. But it definitely makes things more difficult to start. And he talked about that too, and about how you bounce around from a few jobs and then you find what you love to do, and so.
No, it's good. Yeah, I love your cousin, man. He's a great guy. I would say, just in my own experience, the message, I guess the objective is still the same, right? Like, yes, diploma is important, but it used to be for me, like, it was life or death. Like, you either get your diploma or you're going to be nothing, right?
Yeah.
And
he went back and got his GED.
Yep.
As soon as he was out.
But I think we both would agree that message has changed over time, where, hey, it's a really important you get this. There's a lot of life lessons that come with it, but it's not you're going to be nothing if you don't get it now, right? Like,
and we talked about that too. Of when we were in school, everything was, you get your diploma, you go to college.
Right.
And now they're kind of shifting, I don't say away from it, but there's so many more options, and schools are open to discussing those options with kids, which I think is huge.
It's not so linear anymore.
Yeah, it's not college or nothing. It's
yeah.
So many different trades and everything.
Yep.
So
cool, man.
Okay.
Well, good. Well, let's see here. Today on our docket, I think we had talked about possibly doing an update on the 4-day work week.
Yep. Yeah. Now we're at spring break, so seeing how it's going so far.
So let me do my math here. August, September, October, November, December, January, February, and middle of March. So 6 months, we'll say 7 months we've been doing it.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. So what are your pros? Let's start with the positives here.
I feel like I can get a lot of stuff on the teacher side of it, because my kids go to our school too, so I'll talk about that as a parent side. I feel like you can get a lot of stuff done on those days that there's not kids there and we're in school.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes they start to get filled up with meetings, but then I think it must come down from the top that, we need to give them teachers time too. So we've kind of scaled back some of those meetings, which has been huge, that they recognize that. And so we've been able to get stuff done. So I think that's a huge positive. On the teacher side of it, or the parent side, just having that time with the kids, on those days that, excuse me, on the days that we don't have school, right?
Yeah.
I know there was one day or one weekend, and it was in the fall.
Yeah.
I went with my dad and my sister, and we drove up Thursday because we didn't have school on Friday.
Yeah.
Drove up to North Dakota and visited my uncle and stuff. And
Yep.
so things you couldn't do on a normal week that you're able to do. So I think those are two of my big ones. So what about you?
I would say, at first it was a slow go. I didn't like it at first. I felt like it was like a weekend for a teacher, right? How you at home, all your home stuff you push off till the weekend to get done.
Yep.
And so I felt like the 4 days was always a rush to get to Friday, because then on Friday I had all the stuff I didn't get to in the week.
Oh, okay.
And so even on those no school days, like when we had the day off as well,
Yeah.
I still felt the same way. I would say out of Christmas break, though, I've been able to get my bearings and
Okay.
figure out that structure. So now on those days that I don't have to be in the office or in the school, I know now that how to manage the rest of the week, And so, yeah.
I think with anything new, you've got to, there's a learning curve, right? So that's what
Right.
you're trying to figure out is how do you balance those things. So were you saying you'd kind of put stuff off until that Friday,
Yeah.
knowing that you have time to get it done?
Yeah. So a lot of my paperwork, obviously in meetings they take notes, but
Yeah.
I don't do summarization. I don't summarize those and then, itemize those or whatever you want to call it. But I don't do that until I would used to do that at the end of the week because then I could reflect on what the meeting was,
Yep.
process what the tasks were for the following week. So I was pushing that all off to the end of the week. And the nice thing though is as time went on, I figured out how to probably, lack of a better way to say it, manage my time.
Yeah.
Because the routine's different.
Well, it takes time to get that figured out and everything.
Yeah.
If you're able to do some of it during the week, that kind of frees up your Friday a little
Right,
bit. It's
yeah.
not as I've got to get this done by 3:00 or whatever.
Yeah, and I would also say, like on a student standpoint, for me as an educator with working with students, there's so many soft skills that we have to teach students anymore, right? I remember when we first started teaching, we had planners for students.
Yep.
But I just remember a lot of those skills kids came to school with. They knew how to manage their time. They knew what they had to do throughout the day and in the evening.
Yeah.
They knew really like mom works on Tuesdays and Thursdays until midnight, so I have to watch the sibling. There was some type of structure that most students had. And I would just say over time, that's a lot more of the stuff I'm finding I'm have to teaching.
Yeah. Not
Right.
just subject matter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Or just how do you, as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, take the fact that you have XYZ on your plate and not be overwhelmed? And it has increased. And I don't, everyone keeps saying it's because of COVID. I don't want to say COVID. I'm sure these problems were there massively before
Yeah.
that.
I think it put a spotlight on it, but
Yes.
like you said, I think it was getting that way anyways.
Yes.
Maybe that just
Yeah.
sped up the process.
Yeah. So I would say a positive is that. A positive is also I've seen my practice become better. In my mind, before obviously you had 5 days a week to teach something.
Yep.
But you have to be really intentional now with what you have, and it really helped me slice away what was relevant and not relevant.
Cut the fat.
And yep, absolutely. And the minute I began, and this happened, back in September, October, the minute I started thinking about time as money, and not in the sense of earning it, but I have so much time a day to spend.
Yeah.
And so once I realized that, this lesson was going to have me spend $100 or 100 minutes in my week, probably could be done in 60.
Yeah. Is it worth it?
Right. And so just a different way for me to look at it. Yeah.
Well, I think you can use that and look at dealing with other people too.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that time, like if it's going to take you so much to listen to a coworker's problem or deal with a coworker, is it worth spending that currency?
Yeah, the other thing I found out too, and this is probably, you just remind me of it. So before, if somebody would stop in and say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Or I'd see an email.
Yep.
I would try to respond to it right away, right?
Yep.
Because I knew I had 5 days. But with 4 days now, I've started to realize that I can wait till the end of the day to reply to that email or something.
Yeah.
And most times they're not. Within a day or two, I find that if 3 or 4 people have the same question, I'm like, hey, let's meet as a group for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
You take that time gives you or allows you to get questions from other people that are the same thing.
Yeah, and I mean, on the flip end of that, people are out there probably going, well, why make another meeting? But my thing is I don't have another hour of my day, right, to stop in and have 20-minute conversations.
4 different people when you can just have.
It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it from the efficiency standpoint, and maybe that's not very empathetic or people related, but I'm just thinking of how can I be most effective, I suppose. Yeah.
So on the days off, because your kids don't have a 4-day school week, What are your days off like then?
So we keep a normal schedule, obviously, because my daughter doesn't have, Hattie doesn't have the day off.
Yeah.
And so the two boys will go to daycare, and then Hattie will go to school. But I love those days off because I feel more included in my family.
Yeah.
A great example is, for those of you out there listening, when, especially moms, or I guess only moms, you probably feel this way. The first several months, and I'm sure Morgan felt this way too, first several months, if not the first year of your life, you feel like an outsider, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not included in anything. You
You're
have
not
a
the most
baby
important
on
thing.
you. Yes. Yeah. The husband and the other kid are going to play at the park, and you're stuck at the house with the kid.
Yeah.
So you're hearing all these stories, all these fun things, trying to be a parent from the outside, and due course, I'm not saying it's negative, but that's how I felt as a teacher for the last several years.
Yeah.
I'd come home at 6, hear about my wife's day with the kids, or the afternoon with the kids, get to the weekend, and I'd have to relearn how to hang out with my family,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that Friday has definitely cleared up a lot of headspace, I think.
That's good. One thing I will say that we did this year, and it was in February, knowing that we're going to the 4-day week, and having the personal days, I was able to plan to have all 4 personal days this year to carry over a couple. So we went to Disney World in the beginning of February before track started. Because I was not going in the summer.
Yeah,
No way.
No.
Too many stinky people, too hot, too humid.
Yes, very crowded.
And so once we got our 4-day schedule, like, okay, here's a week. We can leave the Saturday after we have a PD.
Yeah.
That next Friday we're off.
Yep.
And then we were able to use just 4 personal days to do that. So that was awesome. That's,
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on how much of a segue this could be to not necessarily year round, but an extended school year.
Oh, well, I don't know. It's, if you cut down the hours in a day, right? Because you have to go a certain amount, right?
Yeah.
So if you did decide to cut down the hours, you could extend the school year if you wanted to.
Well, we're kind of going into the second week of June already now because of snow days.
First week.
First week
I
is,
think
with snow days.
4th or 5th, maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's a long way from doing year round, but
Well, or extended.
yeah,
I think,
extend the school year. If you had are you talking about like for everybody or just like a catch up?
I just think for us, if we went, because right now we work, for all of you who don't know, we work, what is it, extra 60 minutes every day?
For the day is a 30 minutes extra for
30
the kids.
minutes extra every day. Yep.
Yeah.
And so you think about that, and maybe we just win a typical, 8 a.m. to, I'm generalizing here, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 2:30, whatever. And then had the 5th day off, but we just do an extended school year, which would be another, I think it was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So the end of June, right? Then summer break is only, 6 weeks, 7 weeks?
Yeah.
And then you come back and, at least here in Iowa.
So then where would you put the other time off at?
Well, you would have you would have still spring break, Christmas break, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
It's just your time off would extend you till the back end of June.
But how long? So, because, we go to because we've missed days.
Yes.
Before we missed days, it was the end of May.
Right. But what I'm saying is if you just added on another month, you'd extend the school year. So that's what I'm saying is you'd have typical days. You just have every Friday off.
Oh, so you're taking,
And
because you're
then-
taking the 30 minutes away.
Taking the 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
But
I wonder what that would build up to.
I don't know. But I think there's some merit is this idea, and people begin to realize how big the summer slide is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You and I, as sped teachers, we used to really dread that summer slide, right?
Yeah, you see
and have
it
to watch it in the fall
Every year, it seems like.
every year. And, and I know that's not specific to students in special education.
Yeah.
But I even see it with my own kids. I don't know about you, but I see it with my own kids, that summer slide,
Yeah.
and even breaks. Like coming out of Christmas break, it was a slug.
Yeah. And just to refocus them, keep them on, like we talked about earlier, keeping them on the schedule.
Yeah.
Like making sure that they're not sleeping until noon.
Yep.
Because then into this,
Yep.
spring break's a week.
Yeah.
You start trying to retrain them
Yep.
Friday. It's just not,
Oh.
it doesn't work.
So what are you seeing a trend in student performance, academically and behavior? Let's go with as 2 areas. Are you seeing this being a major positive? Are you seeing, what do you think the state's testing going to look like?
Yeah. Cause we have that next month coming up.
Yep.
Looking at the testing that we've done already, I think it was 90%. I'm just throwing. I mean, it was a large amount. Might even be 75, but 75 to 80% of the kids grew from their spring test to fall, and I think fall to winter. Definitely fall to winter.
Fall to winter.
So we've seen growth in that. Attendance wise, kids are coming to school a lot more. Now you still have those outliers. Yeah. You know that you're always going to have those specific kids that make up 80% of the attendance issues.
Yep.
But no, most kids are attendance is better. I think teacher attendance is better. It seems like you have those outliers again.
That's the Pareto effect,
But no, I think and behavior wise, I haven't seen as many issues. Now they're gone one more day a week, so obviously that that counts. But I think it's been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, I do know there was some discussion at possibly doing a once a week detention or makeup day, like on the PD Friday for students.
Oh, PD Friday.
Yeah, okay. This was a while back when ideas were being thrown around. Yeah. I kind of like that idea though. I think as a parent, I think you'd rather have your kid go to school on that 5th day knowing they skipped class, 55 times in the 4 days before that,
Yep.
I know transportation probably is an issue in some of that, and we're going to struggle with that continuously, being a low SES. But,
yep.
But no, I think there's some interesting pieces of that. As far as state scores go, you mentioned on our kind of district-based assessments, there was growth.
No, and that's just I was just looking at the kids that I work with.
Yeah, and so the benefit for them is they get extended time, right, or additional support. I would say.
Yeah.
I would say though, what's going to be really interesting, what I'm really curious about is we started a intervention during our advisory time.
Yep.
And so it's about 25 minutes a day, 4 days a week, that these students, we identified in specific areas of need academically, and we intentionally created some interventions around it. Good, bad, or indifferent, whatever.
Yeah.
We could talk about that all day long. What are your thoughts on that? What did you see? Did you see some additional value in that on a student basis, or?
I mean, I think it's always good to continue to go over it, especially the kids that struggle. Almost all the kids in my advisory were kids I didn't have before, I never had, never interacted with, which is good because then you can kind of build that relationship a little bit.
Yeah.
But like growth wise, I don't know because I didn't see them before, so it's hard to like figure that out until we test and things like that. Yeah. But
I think the hard part for you too was you guys were doing skill building almost like a pre-teach.
Yeah, that's
it was for a unit coming up.
Yep.
I did the other subject side of it, and we did a skill deficit approach. So we figured out what a skill students were lacking on from previous work, and then went about doing an intervention. And so I think the comparison is going to be interesting to see. I mean, obviously it was one and done type of deal in a 6-week. Now, how long did you find, knowing that relationships are huge, and you mentioned the same thing that I had a concern about, was I didn't know any of these students. How long did you find that it took you to build a connection so you could get some buy-in to engage in what you were doing?
To me, it felt like it was more of, this is kind of what we're doing. I just needed to, I didn't really have anybody that, if they were in my room, for the most part, they were engaged, at least answering questions or nodding their heads or whatever it is.
So there was some maturity already built in.
Yeah, and ours was geometry, so I had mostly probably sophomores and juniors.
Yeah.
So I think that was already kind of built in there of that this is what we're doing. So, they weren't, and it's a small enough group, they were okay to answer questions. They weren't afraid to make a mistake, but so I don't know how much buy-in there was.
Yeah.
Now I got to know kids a little more.
Yeah.
Well, when you're just doing the thing that whole time, it's you're not building, you're not talking about things that's not math for the most part,
Right. And that's I think there's something to be said about that too, is we know, and you would probably agree, we worked harder for those teachers we liked, quote unquote, or respected, right?
Yeah.
But those were the teachers we would make sure we took every class they had too.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like you would, even if you didn't know I know there was a couple I didn't know what the class was about, but because of who the teacher was, you took that class.
Yep. And so I like the premise. Obviously, there's no perfect system or silver bullet, and I think what I really appreciate about our administration, I know that a lot of districts and teachers badmouth admin, but what I really appreciate about our admin is that they're open-minded, right? They were always asking for feedback, and not necessarily changes being made, but we're documenting because we are wanting to make this as important and beneficial as possible. So.
And if you have an idea, they're, like you said, they're open to listening to it, and if they think it has merit, they'll let you run with it, and then check back in afterwards, see how it goes. And
I think from a leadership standpoint, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're a head coach. From the leadership standpoint, though, I think it gives you a lot of street credit, right? And your teachers or your staff's gonna buy in more, right? As soon as they feel like they're heard, even if they don't believe in what you're doing, and they're one of those teachers who will automatically tell the students, I don't know why we're doing this, but it's something I have to do, so it's something you have to do.
Yep. Yeah.
But I think even those teachers, once you make them aware that you're getting feedback from them, then they're like, oh yeah, okay, well, I can adjust this a little bit. And they're
not just going to blindly complain about things because they feel like they have a voice in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it'll be good. 4-day work week update. I am a 2 thumbs up, or if we're going to 4-point scale, I'd say it's a 3. Like I like it right now. And parents, for the most part, at conferences, you talk to a few, right?
Well, I talked to one of our board members and asked them, because they were meeting and I think they were going over it, and he said overwhelming support from the community. I think there was a little bit of trepidation, I guess, to use a big word, that they weren't sure how it was going to go, because who's going to watch my kid on Fridays, things like that. But I think after a while, like we did the PD once a month on Mondays, they had the same questions. I think once they figured it out, they realized they have more time with their family. Some may be able to work from home, adjust their schedules maybe if they're part-time or like hourly.
I mean, with a spouse, grandparent, somebody.
Yeah, so I think there's just opens up some more opportunities to spend time with family.
Which
I think most of their kids like too.
Yes.
Obviously there's some that don't have a great home life, that schools are safe space, or they would just rather be around something that's structured.
Yeah, the structure, I think, thinking back, and it's been many years, thinking back to when I was 15, 16, 17, I hated oversight. I hated having having parents, and but there were many days that I appreciated having structure. I knew at 6 a.m. I still had to wake up, practice, whatever it was, work. And those are the days I got into least amount of trouble, right?
When you have, it's crazy how that works. Like we always say, kids want structure.
They may not know it or admit it.
Or they don't know how to deal with it when it first happens. But that's what they crave that.
They do.
So for your program, 4-day week, how did it go?
So I do the project learning and work-based learning. I'd like to say that that's 100% how it should look, but we're still making some progress there. It was okay. The hard part there is most jobs are not 4-day a week. I mean, we're pretty blessed by that as teachers right now. And so trying to figure out a structure that connects to the real world. And so what I ended up doing this year, and again, kudos to my admin and district office for supporting this, is I started to build in some structure of remote work.
Okay.
And so the idea that communication is key, and the idea that we're working in a team. So I may be your project manager or project lead. I'm going to assign you guys tasks every day, whether it's a certain amount of tasks or a certain amount of progression percentage. But each week you have to communicate to me. So right now I have some students who on Thursday are required to give me their next week's schedule, just like I would have when I started working at Hy-Vee.
Yep.
Like I had to put in my time off, and usually it's 2 weeks in advance, but I'm okay with a week in advance here. We'll build some stamina, and so they do. I have some students who are like, hey, I have to work until 11 p.m. on Wednesday, so I won't be on Friday. Okay. Well, you know what your expectation is. This stuff has to be done by Monday.
Yep.
Otherwise, you fall behind, and then we have to have a conversation, right? Just like I would in my real job. Parents get it. The students understand that. And since I've went to that model, I just went through the data before we went on spring break that I have a 95% completion rate.
Nice.
Now, the 5% that don't have their completion or on track, it's mainly because they haven't done the communication like they're supposed to, right?
Okay. Yep.
And so right now, what I probably need to do is go back and see what the breakdown is. One of them is they are a heavy sleeper. So they sleep through the 3 alarms. Supposedly they set 3 alarms. But their parents work from home,
Oh,
So it's one of those deals where I'm like, okay, well, maybe, I probably need to have some system in place there, right? Like, and yes, I could be better about calling and understanding that they're high school students, but you know what? In a year, for most of these kids, they're not going to have a teacher to call them. They're not going to have a parent. Well, some of them will, who are living at home still.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we're building in these structures, right? Habits.
Yeah.
And
well, that's what we always try to do. Is you always try to remove some of the reins, and those remove some of the structure that we're providing.
Yes.
Because they're not going to have it next year.
No. And, we can look at articles all day long on statistics about this generation and workplace. And we can talk about boomers. We can talk about Gen Zers and how they're not flexible, if we want to call them that. But in the same token, these structures that we're starting to see a lot of critique on and see people start to tear down the younger generations, there's merit to them because look at what's been built by these generations. I mean, you can't tell me all the skyscrapers that are up were built by bad people because, their work habits had to have been good because how did that go up?
How did
right?
it get done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think there's some merit in that, and I know I digress on those things, but no, I think our program's seen some success. Our real metrics are seniors graduating, real world connections, and then also are they getting work experience, and so I think those 3 metrics, they're being met at some level of fidelity, and we can always get better. Yeah. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, I think I think overall it works. That 4-day week is working for everybody.
Yeah. What about the day? Do you like Fridays still?
The PD days?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. And I think they've actually gotten better because I think when they first started them, there was a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
The morning is mostly you're together for a couple hours.
I think those first couple, we only had 90 minutes of actual work time in our rooms.
Yep. Yeah. But now I think it's, afternoons are more open to get things done and, and stuff like that. And, like I said, I think people are recognizing that having that meeting during, teacher work time, sometimes you have to, but if you can eliminate it, but with making it an email, I think, our SPED director has done that.
Yeah. And realized that.
And she recognizes it too. Yeah. So,
yeah.
No, I think it's been great.
Yeah, I would say my emails have become more focused. Like I actually put bullet points, action action check boxes, those things. So good point on that.
And I'm interested to see because I know there's 1 or 2 schools that we're going 4-day next year.
Yeah.
In our area.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it'll continue to spread and how that would look as like a larger school.
Yeah.
Because we're 450 kids ish
in the high school, in
our high school, so to see like a big 4A or 5A school,
they'd almost have to probably go on a rotation like we did during COVID, half the kids or whatever. But no, I think it'd be an interesting deal. All right, well, that was supposed to be a segment, and but we had some good conversation on that one. I think
about 30 minutes there. So
what was next on our?
I don't know, but let's talk about. So getting back, because now we're on the downslide once we get back from break. What's your plan for your class? Like, what are you planning on? Do you have a set schedule from the end of spring break on to the end of the year?
Yeah, so I don't know about you other teachers out there. For me, we'll do it two ways. First, we'll start with the teacher side, and then we'll go to the kind of family side,
Sure.
personal side. From a professional standpoint, I am already beginning to plan for the fall. You know what I mean? So I'm already, like next week, I'm going to meet with some business partners, and business partners will just be those people that we're looking at doing internship, pre-apprenticeship, or work-based learning type stuff. So already meeting with them. We're already planning on what the cycle for next year looks like. I've got a couple projects that I'm looking at for the month of April and May, kind of as a so I've always been a fan of this idea of like colleges have a J term or whatever that is, like a 2 or 3 week. It's kind of a fun thing. Students can pick whatever they want to learn about, stuff like that. Or it's a good makeup time, right? Like we have 3 weeks here to do one project that's really going to make up. So it could be a passion project or something. So that's how I've got really designed the last couple months is I'm going to have a handful of students who are off track pretty far.
Yeah.
But they've met the other two metrics to stay within my program. And so trying to get them to do like a passion project or one project to make up those standards. It'll be a tight fit because they'll have about 4 weeks. But the idea is if they can get that done, then they can get the 2 classes or the 1 class that
earn their credits.
Before, when I was in the special education classroom, I would start looking at amendments for next year.
Yeah.
Spring was always the time too. I tried to do almost all of my IEP meetings if I could, because that way when I came back in the fall, I only had minor adjustments to make. And then they'd have to worry about that. Also, curriculum things. So now's a good time to start thinking about curriculum changes for next year. We're on a budget freeze. I'm sure like most districts are. And so purchasing some of that stuff's probably off, but I can do demos, and get that in and trials. And then trainings. There's a lot of workshops and trainings that are about to happen.
Start looking for summer trainings.
Yep, summer trainings and spring trainings. Ones happen in April, May, and then even the fall. There's some that'll start posting here soon.
Yeah.
So kind of a busy list. I don't want to say it's a to-do list, but it's kind of those routine things.
Yep.
Yeah. What about you?
Like you mentioned with special ed, this is where we've pretty much scheduled a lot of our stuff, but just making sure that those are good to go. You're always double checking, triple checking credits, making sure kids are where they need to be. No surprises at the end.
Yeah.
And then now it's busy because it's track season too. So, first outdoor meets on Thursday, next Thursday, and then it's 1 to 2 meets a week. So late nights, got practice, but it makes the year fly by. So
it does. Do you find that you have to spend more time outside of the classroom in the spring getting stuff done, or is that more in the fall?
Usually it's more in the fall. Like obviously, you talked about IEP meetings and stuff, and this year just how it fell. I have 2 after spring break, other than final exits. So a lot of that stuff's wrapped up, and the way our planning periods are, we had 1 in the fall, and I have 2 in the spring. Now one of them's 8th hour, so kind of helps out with we have to leave early for track meets and stuff like that, but gives me time to plan and set meetings and everything like that. So, and having that time Friday is huge because you can knock out a ton of stuff on Friday. So, we'll meet sometimes the special ed department just to make sure we're not forgetting anything, nothing's falling through the cracks.
Yep.
Just checking credits. So when you're scheduling kids, you're not scheduling into something they've already taken or things like that. So,
no, I think you make some great points there. About the fall probably should be a busier time, right? I mean,
you're getting into everything right away. You're trying to make sure everything that you did in the fall or or in the spring or kids that you're getting, and thinking about with special ed that making sure that the person that had them before, the IEP is written well.
Yep.
There's no surprises, no amendments you need to make. Yep. And there always are.
Always are. And and I'll bring up something our AP always says, which is, if you make the investment now, right, it's going to hurt, but we make the investment now, we'll get that interest later, right? And I think you're right. But you and I, that's our nature too. Like we want to have everything set up and completed in the beginning.
Yep.
Because we know that allows our brain space and time to be used later in whatever solutions we need to figure out. I know other people though, that's not their mantra, right? Like their mantra is, I'm going to do a little chunk now, and then I'll do some other chunks as needed, and then I'll solve problems along the way. Which there's nothing wrong with that either. I just, in my mind, when I've tried that, because I've tried different ways. When I've tried that, I was so overwhelmed, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I just found it too much, right? Because not only did I still have an unfinished project of some kind, but then I had this long list of to do, and then now these new problems that come up.
You don't have any freedom of time to. You have to make corrections, or something else comes up.
Yeah.
You don't have that freedom of time to do that because you're, like you said, you're chunking it, so it's a little each time.
Yep.
But if you just do it now,
yeah.
If there's a correction that needs to be made or something changes,
It's just like when we used to have do IEPs. You know, I know people who will spend literally a month writing an IEP, right?
Yeah.
You and I used to do it in a couple days or a week, maybe, you know, at the most, just because we were collecting data of some kind or whatever. But it always seemed like I could never get that thing finished if I didn't get it done in the first week or so, right? Like, you know, and so, but that's just me, right? And then that brings up a lot of stress and anxiety and crankiness.
I mean, because with stress and like you don't have enough time, and even when you do have planning, you get pulled to cover a classroom, or you know, something comes up where you all of a sudden you get pulled into a meeting, and now that time you planned to get something done is out the window. So now you just lost that time.
No, so I think that'll be interesting from a parent standpoint. What do you start doing this time of year?
Well, Chase isn't starting school sports, or he started them this year, so it's gonna be going to that. He's got track, and then he'll have baseball, and Claire will have volleyball, and then softball somewhere. Yeah, and then getting ready to go camping, which is huge. You know, we're so looking forward to it right now. It's 75 right now or something, and you know, they just plan for the summer, and that's kind of what we're doing. So I'm obviously where you were several years ago when your kids were, you know, Hattie's age. And my biggest struggle right now is trying to figure out how to keep them off of the screen and keep them outdoors, you know. And you're right, camping is the great equalizer. Yeah, no, it helps. Yeah.
Well,
it's hard. It's been hard to keep them off the screen when and maybe it's just an excuse, but it's been cold. You've been indoors. What do you do? You know, you can only do so much indoors, and so many board games that it just sometimes. When you've got to get stuff still done, the screen is a default, and you know, now that it's nice out, it's just kicking them outside, and just got to keep doing that. So
keep doing that. I mean, even as a kid, I mean, even now, I remember being a kid where in the winter, because we didn't have electronics like they do now. And complaining to my parents I was bored, and next thing I knew, I had a to-do list for my parents, right? Like, and it was chores, you know. So I laugh now with my wife, but I just remember vividly being a kid, and after so many times of that happening, I just never said I was bored, right?
You figured something out.
Figured something out. And, you know, a lot of times it was probably zoning out in front of the TV against my parents' wishes. In the same token, though, I feel like we're pretty well-rounded. It's not like it's stunted much, you know. And but we do everything in moderation, too. It's not like your kids are zoned out for 10 hours in front of a screen, you know.
But they're inside right now, Hannah.
But they're not zoned out.
They'll come pick up sticks here in just a little bit. So.
You got things for them to do. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But you know, so 4-day update, we got that. As far as planning for this time of the year, and then as far as you know, so I got one for you. As a teacher right now in education, we are hearing all these hot topics. How do you ensure that your students don't become embroiled in that, and that takes away from their education? And 2, how do you ensure that your personal opinion doesn't get imprinted onto your students? Because it's easy, right? Like
that's that's a good question. I think there are some times where kids, I don't want to say that kids aren't paying attention, because a lot of times they are, and they'll see it on social media and stuff like that. And
Right.
they'll get one side of whatever the story is. And they've asked me before, and whether it's, hey, who are you voting for? Whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I just tell them, I go, it doesn't matter. I'm voting for who I think is the best person
Right.
for what I believe. And,
Right.
if they ask me that, then what do you believe in? It is, I don't share what my beliefs are in that, because you don't want to sway a kid. I know it's always been said, kids should not know your political affiliations, right?
Yeah.
And it's, that's one of those things that I think is starting to become lax. And you see it a lot of times on, whether it's TikTok or whatever,
Yeah.
of teachers voicing their opinions.
Yeah.
And if they differ from a kid, getting upset at the kid, and, it just becoming big because they can't handle it. And
Yeah.
those are the craziest ones I see, that a teacher voices their opinion and it may differ from a kid.
Yeah.
And then the teacher goes crazy.
Yeah, I think it has to do with your pedagogical beliefs. And I don't even think it's a moral compass issue. I think it's just pedagogical. And it comes down to, what do you believe your role as an educator is? Is your role to persuade and implement thoughts into, students' minds? Or is it to facilitate thought? You know what I mean? And that's where I think you can begin drawing that line fairly easily. And I love how you said, I don't share what my exact thoughts are.
Yeah.
The idea that you generalize it is fabulous, because not only does it direct and model for students how to think, but it doesn't persuade, right?
Yeah, you're not picking one side. Now, you can play the devil's advocate and stuff like that. Because you can ask a kid, well, what do you think? And then they'll give you one side or the other, and be like, wait, well, why?
Yeah.
Why do you think that? I'm not disagreeing. I'm not agreeing.
Right.
But explain your position.
Right.
And is it something that is valid?
Yeah.
Is it something that's emotional? Is it something that you've heard from somebody that's not true?
Yep.
But I think, like you said, it's not to persuade a kid into what to think, but it's to get a kid to think and defend a position. I think is important too.
Oh, absolutely. Beyond what Uncle Jim said, the other day, at his Thanksgiving rant, and I think, again, I find, and this is my personal opinion, I find my role as an educator to facilitate thought.
Yep.
And again, are there times when I was younger and I probably didn't go about it the right way? Absolutely. But I've learned as I get older, when students ask me, a great example would be Title IX, or some of those other things. And it's, hey, look, I have a daughter, so I have a personal bias or opinion on this.
Yep.
My thought, though, is what do you, like you said, what do you believe in? And let the student give their opinion, right? But what I've also found, too, is it's very important that as soon as a student says, well, my dad said, or my aunt believes, I tend to counter at that point, not to dissuade them, but to really make them think about what they think. Hey, that's a great point. They make. Have you ever sat down and thought about what you think? What is it that you believe? Whether personal experience do you have that would persuade you? And a lot of times these students have no personal experience.
They're just going off what they hear.
Or what they've seen, And so, and we can go all day long about how one media outlet's the devil and the other one is or whatever. But I think at the end of the day, as I get older, I want these students who are going to become voters to think for themselves.
Yeah.
Even if they disagree with me 100%, let's have that spirited debate. But don't tell me what somebody else told you to think. And I think that's important.
Yeah, and I think, and we can, for young teachers out there too, who grew up in a system way different than what we did.
Yeah.
Especially college, is just making sure you're paying attention to how those conversations go, because it'll happen.
Yeah.
You'll have them
You will.
in your classroom.
Yep.
Especially if you're a social studies teacher,
Oh, absolutely. But I think you can lean into that. I mean, you were a social studies major.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a way to lean into that, right?
It's just making sure you're self-aware of how the question or the topic's going.
Yep.
Because you can have a great discussion and debate.
Yeah.
Without imprinting onto the students, what your beliefs are.
Now, let's say let's look from the other perspective here. Let's say because by all means, all of you young teachers out there and veterans, you be you. Like, if you think your role, pedagogical belief is that your role is to imprint societal norms and to help change the future, great, whatever. That I'm not debating that. What's some advice you'd give them to keep them out of the news and keep them out of a principal's office with an angry parent?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because if you start those conversations, just be ready, because you're going to hear from one side or the other. You're going to probably hear from parents. And, I would just make sure you are, if you're going to, if it's not a spur of the moment debate, like if you're planning on the discussion, having all your information there of like what this is going to go through and things like that, taking notes wouldn't be a bad idea, but just being self-aware of like what could happen. Maybe think about what could happen. If you yourself know that I don't want to say emotionally unhinged, but like if you have these conversations,
you're very passionate about it.
Passion is a great word to say. If they're passionate, just make sure that you can reel it back and not go overboard and suddenly become a TikTok star because you mean
don't call kids idiots when they disagree with you?
Not on camera. So
I think those are good points. I would have to agree with you. I think if it's pre-planned, you probably should have a conversation with your administrator.
Yep.
Because they're going to be the first person to tell you, like you just said, have everything spelled out, right? Have some thought on what possible debates are going to come up between students, between you. I would also maybe advocate just a quick heads up to parents. Say, hey, part of my language arts class is a debate on Pilgrims and Native Americans, because we read the book on the Crucible or whatever it is. I don't even know if the Crucible is about that, but it's been a while. But I think, even if you're going to have a debate on ethical issues, like what is that one with the cask of Monte, whatever, where his best friend locks him in the cellar?
The Count of Monte Cristo?
No, it's is it the Count? I can't remember, but the cask of something. But I think there's so many themes in there with drunkenness, ethical behavior. I think just having it, because parents, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as a parent, most parents probably get upset when they find things out afterhand. Yeah, absolutely. Or on camera, right? Because there's an Instagram post from a student of a teacher going on a rant and rave, and that probably should be questioned. But in any case, I think having that just transparency. And then the other thing is, so let's say it's a spur of the moment. So kids in your class, they have, some political party hat on and they're chanting something in your classroom, and they say, hey, Mr. Mund, do you believe this, or is this something you support, or why did you vote for so and so who's a what are your thoughts on that one? You be you, right? Like, we're not talking about the political response here. We're talking about
we can wear hats in our school, so the hat thing isn't an issue with me, as long as it's not derogatory or anything like that, right? Mm-hmm. The chanting, no, we're not going to be doing, it's a disruption to class. But, and then, no kid, they may guess who I voted for, but they don't know who I voted for. So that whole, you voted for this person, I never said who I voted for.
So you stay calm, yes.
Yeah. The worst thing you can do is just get emotional, right?
And just fly off. Be reactionary.
Reactionary, correct. Yeah. So it's just being calm, and you got to realize you're talking to a teenager
who's probably trying to get your goat.
Oh yeah, trying to stir it. They're doing it. Most things they do is for a reaction.
Yeah.
So understanding that their opinion doesn't, I don't say matter to you, like it does not affect me one way or the other.
No,
right?
No.
And just understanding that if you start to have that conversation, that's fine, or the debate or discussion or whatever. Yeah. But as long as you make sure that it is, I don't say balanced, but that everybody, if we're having this, okay, we're going to talk. Nobody's going to be shouting or anything like that.
Yeah.
And if that happens, it just shuts down and we're done with it. If you can't do it as like a a grown up,
Yeah.
then we're just not going to have it.
Yeah, I love it, and it kind of reminds me of the old evolution in science classes, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
There used to have to be not only a syllabus sent out and kind of an explanation of what would be going over, but then when they start talking about creationism and stuff like that being added, I just remember. But the thing about it was intentionally planned out, and it was spoken about a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like both sides.
Yep.
And people made sure they understood not only parent side but curriculum side and it was factual, right?
Yep.
And so one thing that comes to mind too is if you're somebody who wants to be like you fully support something that's a hot topic, that'd be a wonderful time when students start doing that, go, hey, this would be a great time for you to advocate maybe for an after school club.
Yeah. That would be, yep.
If you need a sponsor, I'll sponsor it. And this is if you believe in what they're doing. But on the same token, I think that's a great way for kids to advocate for social groups, right? Because I guarantee the one kid that comes in is ranting and raving about something is not the only one. No. And I think it'd be a good way just to have a small little group. Then you could have the ability to implement or imprint or whatever. Right.
Yep. Your opinion and everything.
And it's a club, and you facilitate like minds. Parents understand what the club's about, right?
Yep.
And it's non-curriculum, so you're not going to drive too many administrators up the wall. You're not going to drive parents up the wall.
It's voluntary. You're not.
Yep.
Attendance isn't taken. You're not required to be there.
Yep.
There's no grade for it.
Yep. Now, if it's something that's extremely hot topic and violent, I'm sure your administrator will say no, but. That's the first filter. But anyhow, I think that's a pretty heavy topic. So let's talk a little bit about our intervention groups, and we'll close with this.
Okay.
Have been kind of mixed, right? We've had the ability for teachers to choose and what they want to do for an intervention, and students can choose what intervention except for the academic ones. Knowing that we're coming up onto a next cycle. What are you thinking you're going to want to do for your extension?
For my next one?
Yeah.
I don't know, because we do chess right now, and I really like
How many kids you have now?
So I have 12. No. You guys put a couple of mine. I have like 13 or 14.
That's awesome, man.
The cap was supposed to be 12.
Yeah, for those of you out there, we have roughly 400 kids in our high school. Mm-hmm. So 40 would be 10%, right? So for you to you have roughly 3 or 4% of the student population.
Yeah,
they're interested in chess, man. Yeah, that's awesome.
So they come in, they'll get a board, they'll play with their friend, and then there are times where we get onto like chess.com and there's a problem on there, like it's a board that's already halfway done. Yep. And you have to go from there and problem solve it and how to win from there. So it's fun. I don't know.
Well, back to your chess. Do you see a lot of kids? Do you see their processing or thought process and strategy, I guess, to use a fancy word? Yeah. Do you see that increasing just when they're having conversations or thinking out loud? Do you see a lot of that? Yeah,
I think so. And I think the more they do it, there's some kids that know that they're worse than the other kids. So there's not Yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of them you're looking at, okay, if I go here, then here, because you're always thinking 3 to 4 steps ahead. Yep. We're trying to. Chess. Yeah. The thing that drives me crazy is they call it a horse and not a knight, a castle, not a rook.
Well, do they make horse noises? Is that what you do?
They don't, but I am like, this is my toughest part of it is like, do I correct them every time they say it? Yeah. Like they enjoy the game. They know, they know what the pieces do. Yeah. Do I really correct them about it's not a horse? You know what I mean?
I'm sure at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I mean,
it bothers me.
I know. You're a purist, Mr. Munn. You're a purist.
So what about you? Because yours is, you guys are doing football.
Yeah. Or I interrupted you, but what are your thoughts on your next, and then I can talk about mine.
I don't know. If the kids would want to do it again, I'd do this again.
I think I think you had another group. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. So I think they would continue to do it. So
good.
But yeah.
Yeah, we're doing so Coach Wiedequist and I are doing a football 101, we're calling it. It's fun because those of you who don't know, Coach Wiedequist has D1 and D2 level coaching experience in football, many years. And so he is very passionate and knowledgeable. It is just wonderful cutting his ball and chain off and letting him just run. You know what I mean? Like he's in his element, and the other part of that is it's been kind of nice for him to work with and see him work with students who behaviorally aren't used to structure, right, and a rigidity of things. I don't know. I've been almost wondering. Every year we do a Gallup poll, and this is across the nation. So many students say they don't have a mentor, right? And then I think about a generation of young men now who don't have one, and how I've benefited, how you've benefited. We can all agree in various areas where we've had a mentor, and so I've almost wondered if that'd be beneficial, but I don't want to be sexist either and say it's a young men's group, right?
It would be fun to do. Like we did before for football, a leadership class.
A leader, yes, and that's what I was kind of thinking about, and and then it could be co-ed. The other one is I love these videos. These guys do videos from Dad, where they teach how to do hey, here's how you change your furnace filter and things you should do every spring, and but the problem there is it's just I'd want to do a lot of it on home maintenance, and there's no good place to do. Unless
20 minutes too.
20 minutes in the school. Even changing a tire is going to take me more than 20 minutes when I'm teaching some, group of kids how to do it. And so, no, I think there's some merit in what we're doing. I think there's a lot of possibilities, but maybe a leadership class of some kind, a book study, have guest speakers. I just don't know how to measure the benefit of that because
that's a tough part because it's going to be beneficial.
Yes.
But what are the metrics on how are you going to?
Yeah, and how do I make sure it doesn't devolve into just general life skills? Like here's how you call the light company when your light's out. And so I think there's some things, but we've also talked about just jokingly a barbecuing class.
Yeah.
Marinade. We could do marinade and barbecue. Like we wouldn't have to cook it. We just learn about marinades and So
especially for 6 weeks.
I know.
Yeah.
But we'll figure it out.
So for your football class, 2 questions.
Yeah.
One, how many kids are non-football players that are in there? So that's question 1. And question 2 is how in depth do you get? Like, what are you guys talking about right now?
Yes, you're right. There's 25 minutes. So I would say out of the 15 students that come regularly, I would say 6 or 7 of them, about half of them, are not football kids.
Oh, wow.
Not out for football. Most of them put down they love football.
Yeah.
And so, but as far as in depth, and Coach Wiedequist and I talked about this because, Wiedequist, he is one of those guys who could talk about the one play of linemen for lineman assignments for an entire week. Like literally. Oh, yeah. And all the situations and outcomes. And so we talked about that because I wanted to build on that because I think that's important. But so what we did is we ended up doing 2 days a week are in the classroom. We call that our chalk talk. And then 2 days a week is what we call our lab. So then we're out on the field doing it.
Oh, nice.
And then on the 4th day, Coach Wiedequist came up with this, but I told him, hey, we need a way to assess. Like, let's assess what the kids are actually getting. And so a great example is after week 1, he did front recognition.
Yep.
And so he made a little he drew up plays. And then every kid had to do the front recognition. Okay. And so that's going to kind of be how we measure some things as we come back. And I think it was a great way to do it. The next thing we'll do is defense. So we just have for offense. And so, it's pretty good. As far as in-depth goes, maybe that's what we do the second go-around. As we say, it's football 201.
Yeah.
Yep. And now we're going to start digging into some of those deeper things, and maybe it'll become an actual class. You and I have always joked about that. It'd be fun to have a actual football class. So.
That's what I'm struggling with. How am I going to prove they're improved? You know what I mean? Like for a chess class.
Yeah,
that's one thing that I'm kind of fighting with.
Calling the pieces their correct name is one.
That's true. Okay. Yeah, maybe that's what we should do is test them on what the names actually are.
Yeah, and maybe it is purely fundamental for you too. And those of you who are listening to our teachers, throw out some ideas at our email or comment as podcast. But something comes to mind maybe is just something simple like what is draw the move structure of a queen?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking too. Like where can they go?
Yeah, where can they go?
That might not be a bad idea.
Because right now it's just the fundamentals.
Yeah,
unless you've gotten into strategies.
No, I just think that's too
way complicated.
complicated right now. So I think them just problem solving on playing. I mean, like every move you're doing, you're problem solving.
Just seeing the big picture.
Mm-hmm. So all right, well, hey, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Well, thanks, buddy.
All right, thanks.